the South African players were just felt like they were walking like giants. I could feel like they'd won it before they'd even kicked off.
I think to go out and make history when everything's against you today, game one, lose and go on and win it.
It was just fairy tale stuff.
I think the greatest team, and certainly the greatest World Cup team, has to be 2003 World Cup.
I've said this on camera. I remember jumping in my living room when Johnny got the drop goal. Welsh are going to fly into me for saying this.
You have to go through the etiquette. Bon appetit to bon appetit, everyone.
Now that you've finished your starters, I'm going to have a bit of a chat with you, and we're going to talk about great Rugby World Cup sides. So the question I'm going to ask you all is, what great Rugby World Cup sides have you been a part of or had the pleasure of watching? So I'm going to start with you, Jason. 2003 Rugby World Cup, you won it. Talk to me about your team.
I mean, I've been spoilt over the years and played with some really good teams. But I think the greatest team, and certainly the greatest World Cup team, has to be 2003 World Cup. Just, I don't know, it's if you're lucky enough sometimes to fall into line when everything comes together. All the pieces somehow seem to fit. And for me, if you think about my 2003 World Cup, I'd only been in rugby union for 3 years. So I was actually still learning the game, but the team itself, Johnny Wilkinson, Lawrence Delalio, Will Greenwood, we just had so many amazing players. And it just makes your job so much easier. It's so easy sometimes to pick out individuals, but the reality is, those guys play in such a way that it complements what you do. And then when you're in there, you just know each other, you feed off each other, and the opportunities open up because of that time you spend together. And then when you get into the big games, sometimes you can't hear yourself talk, but somehow you just know what each other's going to do. And for us going into a World Cup as an England team, as favourites for the 2003 World Cup team, I mean, that's something that doesn't normally happen. And for us, taking that weight into there, but knowing that actually we believe, we can do this. And for me, just winning the World Cup, especially in Australia. Australia's a tough place to go, really tough team, really smart team. But on the night, we just knew, that this is our game, and we came up with one of England's greatest ever wins.
I mean, Bryan, you can empathise. I mean, winning the World Cup in 2007, being able to witness other World Cup teams in South Africa in particular, obviously 1995. Talk to me, what's the greatest teams that you've been
so I
part
think
of?
2003, to Jason's point, it's very rarely you go into a World Cup as the favourites over a long period of time, and that 2003 team literally, under Clive Woodward, from the Lions in 97, South Africa had this process of building towards that pinnacle, and they'd gone over to New Zealand and Australia and sort of shown how good they are. So they'd rank up there. I think for me, as much as the moment was the greatest in terms of winning a Rugby World Cup in 2007, I look at the calibre of players that won the World Cup in 2015, and we talk about the greatest team. To become the first team to go back-to-back, at a Rugby World Cup, and legends of the game, I mean, you literally go through each and every one of those players that started on the bench. Beauden Barrett's still playing at the moment, but Richie McCaw, in my opinion, probably one of the greatest the game has ever seen. You had Dan Carter, getting a man-of-the-match performance in a World Cup final, a centre pairing that was almost invincible in Marnano and Conrad Smith. You had Kevin Mialamu, a loose forward trio of Richie McCaw, Jerome Kaino, and Kieran Reid. When you look at that team, it's phenomenal, and I think to become the first team, and 2007, we went to 2011 thinking we want to do back-to-back. Yeah. It's tough going back-to-back, 2003, 2007, yeah. It's really tough, and to then have what New Zealand had in 2011, for me, I'd go the greatest Rugby World Cup team, just of what they've achieved, the legends that were in that game, Centurions aplenty. and they were a class act. And again, for it to be Richie's final game and win a World Cup, that's pretty special.
But to go back to back in particular, like you said, to deal with the pressure, and we've seen the French teams at the moment. The French side winning the Six Nations.
I would say I'm happy. I'm dreaming when I listen to your words, because how do you describe your team in 2003? I think we have the same team now. I've never seen such a great team in France. We feel it's the moment. The players are very good, but they play always together. Even when they change the whole team, they win in Australia, for example, in June, when normally we are not playing well. And then we beat New Zealand, Australia. I feel it's the moment, and it's in France, and it's not the best team I've ever seen play, because New Zealand for me is not one team, a lot of New Zealand teams, but the one you described is so nice. But I feel we have the best team now. It's not just being proud. I think, I don't know how you feel, but I hope 2023 is for us for once.
I'm hoping as well, in a way, because it is in France. But Sam, look, you've had many priceless moments being in fantastic teams yourself. What would you say has been your greatest Rugby World Cup side?
Similar, I probably emulate what you two boys have said. Your team of 2003 inspired me to play. First time I've said this on camera, I remember jumping in my living room when Johnny got the drop goal. My dad's English, see, so I would only ever would have played for Wales. I'm going to get Welsh are going to fly into me for saying this. I only ever played for Wales, but I supported England as well growing up, because my dad was English, so I remember that 2003 team. I followed you all the way through the 2 years before when you went down to New Zealand, beat them down there, backed up all the hype in 2003. So I thought that was a great team. And from the north, that's obviously the greatest team without a doubt. And then I agree with you, Bryan. I didn't play them in the World Cup, played them in between the World Cup periods, just before and just after, but the New Zealand team of 11 and 15, to back it up twice, they did it at home in massive pressure. And it was sticky against France in the final. But then to back it up away from home 4 years later, it was just fairy tale stuff. So I would say 2003 were close, but New Zealand's back-to-back team of 11 and 15 at the minute, I think, are unrivaled. So Maggie, I would like to ask you, who do you think is the greatest World Cup team?
I'm going to say that 2019 Rugby World Cup team, South Africa beating England in the final. I know you obviously were in that team, but that was a side that you almost felt like going into that World Cup final, the pressure was on them, the history that was going to be made, the emotions. And I remember being pitch side, I think you were with us as well in terms of broadcasting, and just thinking, this South African side, they've won it. I could feel like they'd won it before they'd even kicked off. And, obviously I was supporting England, but you just felt there was this different atmosphere. The crowd was behind South Africa. The South African players just felt like they were walking like giants. And that had to be the one moment when I looked at that side and just thought, this is definitely one of the best South African sides that I've ever seen in terms of how are they handling this emotion, this pressure. And then at the end of the game, I remember seeing Khaleesi with his kids actually, and just being, wow, that man's got the world on his shoulders right now. And he is loving it, but he's so calm and relaxed and acting like it's a normal day. So I'd have to say for me, that South African side that won in 2019, and the way that they won it, and what an emotional moment to almost like repeat history in the sense of, South Africa winning it, but, the first person of colour to be the captain, to hold up that trophy. It was really special. So I'd say that one.
And also the first team to have lost a game in a Rugby World Cup and gone on to win it.
How was it?
That had never been done
I can't
before.
remember the game they lost.
New Zealand, opening game.
Oh yeah, the opening game, of course it was.
Game. Yeah, so again, great teams, but I think to go out and make history when everything's against you today, game one, lose and go on and win it. After England, France, New Zealand was probably one of the most incredible Rugby World Cup performances against New Zealand, France being one, Japan being another one, against Ireland. For me, I actually got pretty emotional. We had an event talking about Sia, myself and Skulk Brits, and I didn't grow up in a South Africa that was... I got given a lot of opportunities by my parents, but Sia was literally going to school to get food because he hadn't eaten the night before. And he actually tells a story of how his grandmother, like sometimes used to tell them that the food's cooking in the pot, and like it'd be an hour or two and the food's still cooking, and they'd like be saying they're hungry, and they'd have to like eventually fall asleep thinking the food's still coming. And he literally went to school the next day, not to get an education, it was just to get. And I said, like, what that moment did transcended the rugby field. You know, it really opened up people's minds. It made Sia a global superstar, but I mean, to create history after losing your first game, it was good. But yeah, probably still going to go 2050.
But that's the power of the game.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, physically he was hungry, but that hunger, actually he used, you know, not to hold him back, but then just to
catapult him out.
Yeah, which was really special. So, yeah.
So guys, I'm going to get the starters and you boys can get the rest of the meals. Are you happy with that?
Got it?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Indeed. Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie.
Very kind of you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.